Hello and welcome back to my Halve music devlog. Last time around we discussed the main theme and how it came into existence. And today I want to talk about how I'm using parts of the main theme in my quest to blend the music with the game design. One of the great exciting challenges about game music for me is thinking about how the music interacts with and adapts to the gameplay. I love to brainstorm about these things and mangle the tools at our disposal to make them work. And for Halve, a great opportunity to do so arises when we have a look at one of the core gameplay features. In Halve, you play as a spirit who has been broken apart into two separate spirits. These little guys are mirrored through a line that splits the screen in two. However, they are controlled by the same input. So when you press right, they both go right. And when you jump, they both jump. You start off with the spirits being in the same place and the environments being the same. However, the core of Halve's puzzle and level design is what happens when things start to shift around. What if the environments start to differ? What if the spirits don't occupy the same space horizontally anymore? And this way, Halve becomes a game where you're toying with symmetry and asymmetry, and the challenge to overcome these puzzles is up to you. This idea is something that struck me right from the start. What if we had melodies or rhythms that were either mirrored or displaced? And that's where I started experimenting. Started my quest in looking at how the characters are mirrored through the line in the middle of the screen. This sparked the idea, what if we do the exact same thing with the music? So a melody that is played up-down could be played down-up at the same time. Let's have another look at the main theme. The main motive of Halve's theme consists of an arching figure. We hear this figure 3 times with 3 slight variations, twice at the start and once at the end. The phrase in between is a little B section that I can expand upon when the need arises. The advantage of using motives this way is that you can take the theme apart and pick out these little motives individually, but each one individually will still remind you of the main theme. This way I can use the theme in many ways throughout the entire score. If we flip the motive on the y-axis and mirror it through this line in the middle of the screen, you get the following statement. If we transpose it a bit and play it together with the main melody, we get this. This was the first basic step I took in incorporating symmetry. I applied this principle to all the different motives of the main theme and could use these either together or as individual statements sprinkled throughout the score. Now with this in place, we can start thinking about asymmetry as well. While the symmetry is mostly vertical, the displacement mostly happens horizontally. In most levels of the game, the player will have to position the characters in such a way that they will no longer be symmetrical. One might have to be blocked by a rock for the other to stand in a specific place before the level can be finished. The asymmetry in this case is horizontal. The positioning of the characters on the x-axis of the screen determines how you can progress in the level. In musical terms, we can look at this displacement on the musical x-axis, as it were, rhythm. By displacing the inverted counter melody to a different starting point in the bar, I can capture the asymmetry of the characters in the music and create interesting musical textures at the same time. The first example of this happens again in the main theme. When the melody repeats in the viola, there is a counter melody in the cello. This counter melody is the mirrored inversion of the theme as discussed earlier, but is placed 1 bar later this time around, signifying the displacement of the characters. The displacement is quite large, it's a full bar, and features a rhythmical variation. This makes it less obvious that I'm using this technique, but it's still there. But this didn't satisfy me yet. The greatest challenge I faced and I'm still facing is seeing how we can have this rhythmic displacement happen in real time as the characters are moving around. I've taken a couple of bars in my sketching session to try out what it would sound like when I displace these 2 melodies by just an 1/8 note. These create interesting textures that I can use and sprinkle through the score. In the forest chapter, you will gain some abilities to sync or desync the characters. I've been experimenting with different ways to make the different layers of the music go along with this. This isn't finished yet, but I want to give you a quick insight into my idea so far. The inspiration from one of my experiments comes from the end of A Plague Tale: Innocence. Quick spoiler alert if you haven't played this game yet. Here, Hugo gains the ability to control the rats using the macula. The music in this scene, written by Olivier Derivière, follows a very interesting structure. When Hugo is walking around with his mother, there's an atmospheric bed playing. Then, when Hugo starts controlling the rats, an extra layer of mystical cello lines is introduced, which fades away when he stops using his ability. Being inspired by this idea, I wanted to try and do something similar. What if we hear the rhythm being displaced with the characters as they are using this ability? So when you trigger ability on, the rhythm is still like this, but when it's moving on the x-axis, you hear the rhythm move along in real time as well. So when the ability activates, we hear some music that it's signifying the use of the ability. And in this piece of music, we will hear the rhythms moving in real time as the characters are moving. Then when we get out of the ability and the characters are displaced, certain layers of the music will have been displaced in the queue going forward. In order to make this work though, I've had to dive deeply into Wise. Wise is the middleware we're using, where you can build the logic of the music and the audio in a way that's way easier to do compared to if you would put it directly into Unity. And I'll be talking more about that in the next episode. I'll share about my process learning Wise, and we'll start taking a peek into our Wise project to see how we're making everything we've talked about so far work within the context of the game. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next one.